Welcome to the Evolution of a Property Business podcast, brought to you by Sam Watterson.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the Evolution of a Property Business podcast with me, Sam Watterson. And today I'm joined by the wonderful Caroline Tolman. Hey, Caroline.
Wonderful. That is very nice. Thank you, Sam. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Good stuff. Glad to be here. Thanks for asking me on.
No problem. Thanks for joining me. So let's dive straight in. And as I do with all my guests, if you could give us a brief introduction to you and what you're all about.
So, okie dokie. So I am Caroline Tolman. You can find me on Instagram at Caroline Tolman Property. I started investing in property 5 years ago, and predominantly our main focus is buy-to-lets and HMOs. And we have just recently started getting involved with service accommodation as well, which has been kind of another big learning curve for us over the past year or so. So I'm a mum of two, married for 9 years. I was thinking about that today, actually. So 9 years, and I really kind of drive the portfolio by myself with the support of my husband in the background as well. So yeah, I'm very busy.
Because obviously I know you. We've started out on the same training course 5 years ago.
Yep.
And met them, been part of the same network. So you're in the business with your husband, Mike.
I am,
and
well remembered.
Mike still works full time, and
Yeah.
you do the property full time.
Yeah,
I think you said to me before you found that really useful in terms of going for lending and that side of things. So a lot of people, when they get into property, are really keen to leave their job, dive straight in and go straight for it. So what advantages do you think you've had from Mike maintaining his job and then you kind of doing the property together?
Well, that's a really good question. For us, so I was working part-time. So before we started investing, Mike was working full-time, I was part-time, we had the two kids, and we kind of looked at it and thought, A, who's bringing in the bigger income, and B, who has the more time, the more flexibility with the job. So I was in sales, I was on the road, I was traveling up and down the country. My old boss is not into property investing, so we may not hear this, but literally we took the decision of how can we fit investing in and around my job. And kind of the goal at the time, because we're talking 5 years ago, my eldest son was due to start school the following year. And we kind of looked at it and thought, right, if we can do so much in this first year whilst I was working to cover my income, then that would mean that I could then leave my job and I would be the kind of the sole driver of the business then going forward. So it was kind of, that decision was made purely on time and income. But then from a kind of Mike staying in his job point of view, everyone's going to have different figures that they want to get to, that monthly kind of net cash flow figure, and there's no right or wrong with that. But for us, we are still at a point 5 years later where we haven't taken any cash out of the business because we've wanted to grow at such a pace. So Mike's still working, that pays for our daily lives, kind of supports everything around that. And then our property business is standalone by itself. So everything that we generate in terms of cash flow, every remortgage, anything like that, all stays in the business. And that has just kind of really enabled us to keep going at a faster pace than we would have been able to if we were taking money out. And like you touched on as well, from a lending point of view, it was key for us. He was obvious, because lenders are always going to look at you as the directors of your business. Yeah. We needed his income to actually be able to get lending on any property that we were purchasing, because we weren't at that 25k threshold at the start to actually support it just through the company. So it would probably be a different kettle of fish now. But the other side is Mike really enjoys his job and he gets paid well for it. And I think he likes having that as a separate baby. That's his focus. And then I've got property as well. God knows what would happen if he left and he came and worked with me.
Strips out of each other.
Exactly.
I think it's interesting hearing you say that, because the misconception is that people will get into property, leave the job, replace their income from the job with the property. Now with my property portfolio, for me, I was always like, I don't want to spend that money because you might need it to replace the boiler, it might need a vacant. And if you're continually spending your rent money every month,
Yeah,
you leave yourself open. You might not be open to it today, but in 2, 3 years' time, when you need that cash, you could be reliant on it. And that's when you get problems that we have with landlords. When they live on the rent, they don't want to do the maintenance because when they're spending the
exactly.
money on the maintenance, that's their spending money. And so for me, I set up Watson Co because I wanted that to pay my bills and give me my
Yeah,
income so that my
yeah,
properties could then be standalone. And then what I do is I let that money build up and build up and build up. And then from time to time, if I want to go on holiday or buy something nice, I'll draw a little bit down because you,
yeah.
you pay tax on the whole amount regardless. So whether I retain it within the portfolio or I spend it,
Mhm.
but I'm making that decision rather than trying to live on it, which I think,
Yeah, exactly. I think the other thing to kind of be mindful of as well is, like, we went on the same training and you hear everyone kind of follows the same route of buy something, refurbish it, refinance, do the work once and get paid. But then in actual fact, okay, so I like doing HMOs and they're always nice and shiny and the best ones in the city.
yeah,
But then fast forward 5, 6, 7 years and you need a new kitchen, you need new carpets, everything needs decorating, and you're not refinancing again at that point,
yeah,
or we're not anyway, because we're trying to kind of, over time we're looking to kind of lower our gearing
yeah,
across the portfolio. So it's always be mindful of that as well in the future, that you're going to have these extra 7, 8, 9, 10,000 pound little pots that are going to kind of come along at you as well. So it's
yeah.
just something to kind of consider.
It's just factoring in that a percentage of your monthly income needs to be put away because you'll do a refurb in the future that might cost you a big lump.
Yeah,
It's making sure you've got the money at that point.
yeah,
So
100%.
you got started 5 years ago, which was the same time that I did my training. And the sort of hook with the training company we both got involved in was replace your income through property. And
Hmm.
although I don't disagree with that, I think that's used to attract people who might not might not have thought about property, and that gets them thinking, and it gets them onto the initial courses, which then develops. Whereas I've always thought that the best thing to do is have property as a business, hence the title of this podcast, and
Yeah.
have property businesses as well as have your property investments. So 5 years ago, you're working in sales. What was it about property that made you want to learn more or get involved?
So, being honest, I had no idea about property at all at the time. It was one of those weird things where I think me and Mike had been talking, and your phone listens to you and kind of pops up adverts. Now, Mike's a massive Liverpool fan, and we were talking about property investing, or he was talking about it because I had no clue. And Robbie Fowler popped up on his Instagram, and so that was his hook. That was kind of
Yeah,
piqued his interest. And before we went to any training, he'd said, right, what I'm thinking of doing is buying a property with some friends, because he had like 3 friends that were living in London at the time. With 3 friends in London, we'll each chip in for the deposit, hold that for 20, 25 years, sell it, and that'll be our pension pot. And that's it. That was like the plan. And then anyway, up pops Robbie Fowler. That'd be a different education course. We went on that, and he said, "Look, come with me if you can get the kids sorted." So went on that, and that just kind of totally blew my mind. Now, obviously, these courses, like you say, the training programs are in the business to sell, so they can't sell something by saying, "Come and get involved in property investing. It's pretty hard, or not many people make a success of it, but give us 20 grand." Like, it
yeah,
just doesn't happen. So of course they have to sell the like win-wins, that it's easy and anyone can do it and you just literally get your offers out there, blah blah blah.
yeah,
So, but we were absolutely revved up after we went on this training course. I think it's the most we've ever spoken when we went out for tea.
yeah.
Like, full stop. So yeah, we just decided at that point, and I was really motivated by it as well, because I could see with the kids getting a bit older, I was kind of thinking, I want to be able to be there. My mum and dad were self-employed when I was younger, so they could always take me to everywhere after school, and kind of any tennis tournament that I used to play or any event, they could always work around it. So I kind of could see that Harry was about to start school and all of that was going to come in the coming years.
Yeah.
So I saw property as a way to give me the flexibility, which, funnily enough, kind of when I was younger, seeing my mum and dad being self-employed, I thought, freaking, there's no way I want to do that. Like, I want a boss. I want someone to just pay me. I don't want the stress of having to actually deal with problems. Like,
Mm.
I'll take employment all day long. And then I started work, and I think as most people do, when you leave uni, you get a job, you get your first salary, and you're like, oh my God, I've got so much money. I feel so minted. And then you kind of realize that you're just on this treadmill and that's it, your hamster wheel, and you might get a 3% pay rise here, or you might get 1.5 there, but unless you move, your kind of options are limited in a way. And for some people, that's fine. And I'm not saying there's any right or wrong, but I was kind of just starting to get a bit worn down by the whole sales, on the road, traveling, being away from the kids, and thinking that I wasn't going to be able to be there for them. So then actually, property was kind of my way out. And then, bizarrely, yeah, being my own boss, which I didn't ever think I wanted to do. But I wouldn't change it for the world. That's what I do now.
You know, when you say about stress and problems, I think one thing you realize quite early on is in a job you have stress and problems, but
Yeah,
they're other people's problems, other people's stresses. Whereas if you're self-employed, it's, you know, at least it's yours and you can take ownership of it, and you've got the freedom to, you know, for example, when I first started my first business, I started doing twice as many hours for half as much pay.
yeah,
This
yeah,
business, I've not had a pay rise in 5 years, and I'm happy
yeah,
with that because
yeah.
I'm on a different mission,
Yeah,
and I'm
you're
looking.
doing it for yourself. That's the
Yeah,
thing. It's your baby. And I remember seeing a quote in it, like it was on one of the training courses that we went on, and it kind of really resonated with me that just in terms of, are you building somebody else's dream? When you're going to work, are you building somebody else's dream, or are you building your own? And I was kind of like, well, yeah, that's what I am doing. I'm helping somebody else go on their holidays and do all this and get their bonuses, when actually do this and it's building something for us, and not just for me and Mike, but for our kids and for their kids, and it's just going to be this big succession thing.
yeah, brilliant.
But yeah, so that's the appeal of it all, really.
So, if there's anybody who's listening to this podcast or watching the YouTube um, and thinking about doing property training or not sure about property training, Caroline is probably the best example I can give you of somebody who's come from not a property background, but you know, a professional background. She's obviously intelligent and got skills, but has done the training and has applied what she's been taught, and she's just followed the process and followed the formula and got incredible success in a relatively short period of time. So, with that in mind, I'd like to ask you first, how is the property market now in your eyes compared to 5 years ago when you got started? How have
Mhm.
you seen that change? But
Yeah.
also, let's find out, you've gone from doing the training course and saying, right, I'm going to do this, to today. I want to hear about your achievements, what you've done, how it evolved, and what you've succeeded with.
Okay, so should we do like achievements first, and where, so I'll flip those round, those two questions, in terms of where we started.
Yeah,
So yeah, 5 years ago, we kind of thought, right, we want cash flow, so we're going to go into HMOs. But actually, first, I just wanted to trust the process of buying something, refurbing it, refinancing it, getting cash back in the bank, because I just thought that is not going to happen. So we did a buy to let in Doncaster. That was our first little learning curve. Touching on the property market then and now, oh my God, if I could go back 5 years and buy everything, I would have done, but you don't know what you don't know. So we took so long, and everyone will do the same because you don't have the confidence, and confidence grows over time when you've got experience. But that first deal, we, rounding the numbers, bought it for 50K, spent 10 on it, refinanced it for 75. So at 75%, we pulled out 56. So we left 3.5K in the deal. I mean, all day long, I would do those right now.
yeah,
But the market's moved on a lot, and that's just the nature of the game. So we did that first single let, and at the same time we had an offer accepted on a HMO in Doncaster as well. And again, the same thing, because we didn't have the confidence, we didn't know the rooms were going to fill. We just thought, we'll just do this one. We'll just do this one, see what happens, and then we'll go from there. So that one was fine, got all the numbers that we wanted, it filled straight away. And then we're like, right, let's do another one. So in that time, in our first year, I think we only did 2 deals because of the amount of time that it actually took to kind of find the deals, get the offers accepted, but then just going through the process of buying a house and going, I don't know what I've got to do. So learning that, going through the refurb process, I mean, doing a HMO, we had 3 different build teams come out. So we had a guy that we knew, a guy that we didn't know who was a HMO specialist, and a guy that was recommended. And we got 3 different quotes. And so that was like a massive learning curve in itself. We actually ended up going with the guy that we knew, which was really good because the HMO specialist went bust about 3 months later, which would have been a disaster. So yeah, there's a lot to be said for your relationships and people that you know. But yeah, so we started with that. And then fast forward, we kind of went, right, okay, we've got the confidence, but actually, because the time it took us to do our HMOs in Doncaster, Article 4 then came in. And actually speaking to our agents around there, we were kind of like, it's pretty saturated, and the tenant type that is there as well, we kind of thought maybe we want to move. And just one of the things for us is that we've never stayed in the same place. So we've really, our portfolio is very diversified in terms of, we've got the 3 different strategies, HMO, buy-to-let and service accommodation, but then also different areas, because I just don't want to be open to one area, one tenant type, something happens, and then you're up shit creek. Pardon my French. So then, so we fast forward, we then picked up pace, we moved to another area. We are now up to, as we speak, we're kind of almost up to our cash flow goal that we'd set like 5 years ago as a long-term 5-year goal. So that initial goal in 1 year was £2,000 just to cover my income, which we'd got to. And then now we're up to a decent, chunky portfolio. So I'm like, do I say a number? Do I not say a number? I don't know if anyone is actually bothered. Like, it's one of those weird things when people ask you, and you're like, people love to say, how many properties have you got? And you're like,
I'll tell you what, I'll jump in a second.
Yeah.
I've set myself, because I've been building my business. So we chatted before I started recording that I'd focus mainly on building the business.
Yeah.
But the business doesn't pay me loads. Like, as the business grows, I reinvest in the business and take on more staff. And now my focus is going to be on my personal income to sort of go on top of the portfolio I've had for years. And I've set myself an initial target of £10,000 cash flow every month. And another target is I want 20 HMOs or SA meaty conversions. And they're the 2 targets I've got. So I don't think it's bad. I know sometimes people don't want to talk about the money that they want or the money that they have, but I always quantify everything with numbers.
Yeah.
I'm like, right, my number is this at the minute, and I want to double that.
Yeah.
I double that. What can I do? I can take my missus out of work, and by quantifying it, you can work backwards.
No,
so if
you're
you want to tell us what your goal number is, or what your number is now from what you've achieved from you started, then it will give people an idea of.
So by the end of this year, we should be at 15k net cash flow a month.
That's in 5 years as well, everyone listening.
Yeah.
So it's doable.
Yeah, so that is in 5 years. And I remember when we first started, like you've said, in terms of quantifying and looking at figures, the way that I kind of, because I work with mentoring clients, so when they're starting out, I'll kind of say, and this was a exercise that myself and my husband did, it was to write out our dream life.
Yeah.
What do you want? What does that look like? I want to have a blow dry every other day. Probably wouldn't, because I'm not that high maintenance, as you can see.
Yeah.
But also, PT, I want to have such and such a car. I want to go on so many holidays. Just, nothing's off limits kind of thing. So we did that. And that got us up to, I need to check if this was both of us or as a combined figure, but I'm pretty sure my figure was around 30k a month. which is super extravagant,
Yeah.
ridiculous numbers. But I mean, if you're not going to aim for something high, then what's the point?
Yeah.
So we're kind of like, right, by the end of this year, we could be at half of that as a figure. We're halfway there.
Yeah.
So then we've got a decision to make of, do we try and rinse and repeat what we've done and just copy and paste? But like you said, in terms of the market as well and how different that is
Yeah.
and what could happen over the next 2-3 years. So this year we've kind of gone, because as I touched on with before when we before we started recording, that we've got like 6 or 7 that are just still in refurb, that are vacant, that are costing us money, which when they are tenanted, that's going to really kind of game change our figures that we're on currently and should get us to that 15. So we're kind of in a bit of a consolidation point this year, where because we have just grown so much, we've bought loads. I've only had agreed one property earlier this year, but it fell through because it was non-standard construction. We've since agreed another one, which could be an SA or could be a single let. But then I'm kind of going, right, that's it. We need to just consolidate, see where we get to by the end of this year. And then that's when we need to reassess on what we're doing. Do we copy and paste for the next 5 years? Or do we diversify? Do we do something different? Do we go into developments? Do we do commercial to resi?
I think my take on that would be do both.
Yeah.
Because one of the mistakes people do in property and in business and in life is they go, work really, really hard on this. This is now working. I've nailed that. So I'm going to go and do something else.
Yeah.
It's like, well, hang on a minute. That's working. You've nailed that. Don't let that go. It's just got easy. So it's got boring and it's got repetitive and it's got samey. So my belief is always automate it, bring someone else in to run it for you, but you still have that.
Yeah.
And then when you diversify alongside your other thing. Because you could build a portfolio slowly but surely and steadily and get to 15 grand a month and have, really nice portfolio. And then you go, right, we want the big time now. Let's go and do a massive development, which brings everything.
Exactly.
And you need to be careful.
Well, it's risk, isn't it? It's risk that we don't need to take. So, and I think people do kind of, like you say, you get bored, like buy to let. You're like, another buy to let. Oh my God. I'm like, can I not do a commercial to residential, which gives me 6 buy to lets in one go, which may just be quicker and easier. But it is funny when you think back to like doing your training and education. I had no knowledge on single lets at all. So everything at that point was scary. It's like, oh my God, putting an offer in, like actually viewing a house, speaking to an agent, everything was hard. And then that's where I'm at now. I'm like, well, buy-to-let and HMOs are comfortable. They're easy. I know what's going on with those. So it's actually probably just need to kick up my ass to kind of go, let's try. But like you say, keep doing this, keep doing that side, keep that spinning. But let's just get out of that comfort zone again.
Yeah. And how have you found the transition from buy-to-lets and HMOs into service accommodation? Much different?
Yeah, more kind of, I mean, you know what they say, the more kind of cash flow that you're getting from a property, the less passive the actual strategy is. So buy-to-lets, other than one shocker that we've got at the minute with a nightmare tenant, they just tick over. I've just literally, before I came on this call, I've done an assessment with my assistant on kind of every month we'll sit down and go, right, cash flow on every property. She'll put together a spreadsheet for me. What's performing, what isn't, why isn't it? Okay, there was this that went on. Okay, as long as we're on top of everything, it's fine. So buy-to-lets, we can literally tick through those pretty quickly. HMOs take a bit more time, a bit more thought around what's going on, more management, not directly from me because I don't do that, but kind of liaising with our management company. In terms of the SA, so that's something that I do manage. So I automate as much as I can through Airbnb. So it is really good, really simple in terms of, guest check-in messages, or the day before you need to just send this automated message and put together a house booklet and blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of stuff that you can automate. Everything's contactless, but I think it's just, for me, the difference is obviously you've got guests and how quickly the change well, the changeovers happen, but just the nightmare that you have with some guests and kind of people. You have obviously people in your HMOs that are there 5 to 6 months who, when you actually go back into a room, you kind of go, oh my God, I can't believe people have this little respect for property.
Yeah.
But then that can happen in an Airbnb in like 2 days. You're like, what the hell? What has just happened here?
Yeah.
So that's been a big learning curve in terms of how we kind of vet people that are going in, and guests that are using the property. So, but we've just, because we've got one that we were doing short-term lets on, so just weekends, and that was just because of the nature of that house.
Yeah.
The other one that we're just setting up, I've literally just had a booking for 4 months because I thought, let's just do longer term. So this
Right.
guy's just come in. I would never, it was prompted by Airbnb. Do you want to offer kind of longer term stays because that's a trend in your area? So I just went, yeah, let's try it. We'll still send our cleaner in. And yeah, this guy's just booked from the 1st of July through to the end of October.
Wow.
And yeah, he's coming to look at the area. He's looking to potentially move to the area and just wants to kind of do a bit of a recce and see what he
Yeah.
likes and what he doesn't like, which hadn't really crossed my mind that there were people like that. So yeah, more kind of, I'm hoping when he's there, then that'll perform a bit more like a single let.
Yeah.
But it just depends on the duration of the stay, really, for me.
I think it's a bit of a hybrid because I did service accommodation last year for a few months. And
Yeah,
honestly, the reasons why people stay vary wildly from different people. You'd have
yeah,
people coming up for a week, to, with the dog.
yeah,
I had one where it was a group of young lads, which made me really nervous, who they just wanted to come and play PlayStation,
yeah,
like, and eat crisps away from the parents. There
yeah.
was other people who were visiting relatives or like a family event, in the hospital. There's many different reasons why people would book.
I know, and that's it. I think ours are both in the village that we live in,
Right.
and it is one of those things where you take for granted where you live, but
Yeah.
actually, and you do think, why are people coming here? What is the here? But there's countryside, there's walks, there's nice bars, there's restaurants, and that's it. People just, after everything that we've been through, it's kind of like they just want a change of scenery, don't they?
Sometimes you don't look past the end of your own nose when it comes
Yeah,
to what's on your doorstep.
exactly.
And the good thing about Leeds and Yorkshire is, Leeds is a massive city, but you can go from the city centre to pretty much Yorkshire countryside in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Whereas in London, you can get from your house to the tube station at that time. So,
Well,
it's
that's
kind of like,
sorry, Sam. I was just going to say that's kind of the appeal with SA as well,
yeah,
because I do like when I'm looking at a property, and this is something that we were taught. It's like, well, make sure that you've got 2 exits for it.
yeah,
So if something doesn't work, can you do something else on it? And actually, when we first started and we wanted to do buy-to-let and HMO, where we live is a really nice area, and we wanted to buy houses here, but it wouldn't work. The strategy didn't fit because
yeah,
of, or we couldn't have 2 options. Whereas now the fact that we've kind of dipped our toe with SA,
yeah.
like that just makes the numbers work to buy properties around here. So it's just given us another option, another way to diversify.
Yeah, another string to your bow. So when you're
Yeah,
looking at a property, you can think, what's the best strategy that suits this property, rather than
yeah,
I'm trying to find a property to suit the strategy.
100%.
So before I forget,
Yeah.
the other question,
Hmm.
because I and you both know that in the last 5 years, the property market has gone.
I
So
thought you were going to go, ooh. I was like, what? Did
it's
it? Did I miss
changed. And one thing I found about the training is the way we were taught property investing 5 years ago isn't relevant today.
it? Mhm.
So you mentioned before about Doncaster, the prices, and the Article 4, and having to adapt and change. How have you found the last 5 years, and what do you think the major changes have been, and how have you adapted to those changes?
I think when we first started, we could just find deals online. Sorry, on Rightmove, you could go into estate agents and you could easily pick up deals. Not easily, but I remember the first one that we bought for 50, it was on the market for 60. I
Yeah,
think my first offer was 48 with an agent, 48k, and he was like, no, but you're not far off. And you go, okay, 50 then. And we got it. That would just not happen in this. If that was the same house, to be going, it's on for 60. oh, it actually sold for 72. Like,
Yeah.
that's the difference. That's the market that we're in now. So I think for me, it's actually getting better at finding, or I've had to understand how to find deals off market. So
Right.
that's been kind of the biggest change over the past 5 years. So now I would say, well, I would say half and half really in terms of on the market and off market, the properties that we've bought. But more predominantly, the last 2.5 years have been more of the off market.
Mm.
So
Personally, what I've found is I've had to be more creative. So I still
yeah,
find a lot of stuff that's on the market.
yeah,
I have to look at ways that I can take what's there and adjust it and amend it and adapt it. And
yeah.
I'm now thinking, God, if only I'd known 5 years ago what I know now, everything I would have done 30, 40, 50 houses.
100%. And this is something that I say to the guys I work with as well. The amount of houses I walked away from 5 years ago because I was just thinking, like, had my little blinkers on, going, I want this as a HMO. No, it doesn't work as a HMO, or the ROI doesn't work for me, or I'm leaving too much money in, or
Yeah.
whatever. Whereas now I'm like, you've spent all that time on finding a deal, find the way that the numbers work, find the solution for the vendor,
Yeah.
and find, if it's not for you, find the person that it is for, and actually monetize that time that you've spent. Don't just walk away from it. So that is one of the big things for me as well. I look back and I'm like, oh my God, all those houses that, and also, being naive, or yeah, a little bit green, when you kind of go, I'm not budging for £1,000 more, or
Yeah.
you kind of go, I can't believe that I used to lose deals over that, or
Yeah.
and again trying to get, remember walking out of the classroom and kind of going, right, I mean, I take to the letter of, if someone tells me to do something, I'm like, right, okay, I will do that. And I think that's why we have been so successful, is
Mm.
because we all get taught the same stuff.
Yeah.
That's what amazes me, when people don't apply what they've been told to do. It's actually quite straightforward.
Mm.
It's just a hard process because there's lots of no's along the way, and then that's where you lose motivation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember going to a viewing, an off-market viewing, managed to get like direct to vendor, and I was just thinking, I need this to be money in, money out. Need it to be money in, money out. And I'd said to the vendor, I can't remember what she wanted for it. It was like a son's house. I think maybe she wanted 55. And actually looking back now, at 55, that would have been a perfect deal. And I offered her something like ridiculous, like 32 and a half, because I was going, my cost of my money, cost of refurb, needs to be. And I just think it's understanding your own position that you're starting in. Some people will need money in, money out
Yeah.
deal, but we didn't. I was just really applying to the letter what I'd been taught, instead of kind of thinking,
Yeah.
well, being creative, like you kind of find another solution
Yeah.
for
Or
this.
not being scared to leave money in the deal and
Yeah,
and borrow that from someone and factor that into your numbers.
exactly. Yeah,
So talking about numbers, then, are you up to about 9 HMOs now?
10.
10.
But
So
actually, 9 that are tenanted. The 10th is the one that has been waiting for planning permission for ages, with the bike shed.
oh,
So that is empty currently because we're waiting to refurb that. So
because you just finished one, didn't you, recently? Is that one let now?
just finished, and yes, I had an email just before because I was chasing up just the letting agency where we're up to. Every room is taken, and we've just kind of maxed out. Our ceiling rent before was 600. We've just got 660 for one of the rooms in.
660. Wow.
Yeah,
That's in Wortley, isn't it?
it's what?
Is that the one in Wortley?
No, miles away from there. Yeah,
Ah,
there it is. Just kidding. Yeah, it's in Wortley. And that's why I love Leeds, because again, looking at the analysis over the past months, the Leeds properties are just always, and I'm doing your job for you here, I'm doing you a bit of marketing as
yeah.
well. For Leeds as a city, compared to Wakefield, Doncaster, Castleford, Wombwell, other places that we buy, Leeds for HMOs is just above
If
the
you
rest.
can get the property,
Yeah,
it's banging.
yeah,
It's getting the property, getting the right planning, getting the right area. So, I'm a massive advocate of Leeds.
yeah.
And that's where I'm going to build my portfolio. And I say to people, look, spend the money. Don't whine over your ROI. Just spend the money, get the property, because in 10 years' time, you'll still be tenants one in, one out.
Yeah,
The 660 is beautiful. I'm making a note of that now.
There you go.
Is it
I
bigger
think
than
we've
that?
got, I think minimum was 500. And then, yeah, 500, two at 550, a 600, and a 660.
That's awesome.
There
Well
you go.
done.
Thanking you.
So when you got started then, because the big thing about property is finding the properties
Yeah.
and it's also financing them.
Hmm.
So you're a big advocate of leverage. So you've talked about using agents and you've used sourcing agents in the past as well as finding properties yourself.
Yeah.
So a lot of people listen to my podcast will be property sources or getting into property sourcing or deal packages and interest in that side of things. So from an investor's point of view, how have you found working with sources, and is there any tips you could give sources on how to work with investors better and just
Yeah.
offer a better service?
Yeah. So, like, I've had good and bad experiences with sources. Not really bad, but those relationships have just never developed and haven't gone anywhere because the main thing for me around sourcing is being able to build up a good trusting relationship with your clients. I've had people send me properties but then not tell me the street name or the address or kind of that the basics around the deal, and I'm going, well, how can I see if this stacks up if you're not going to give me
Yeah,
the bare bones of the deal? I need to see that. Or kind of asking for NDAs to be signed, or we need a fee of like £2,000 up front before you can actually see the deal. And I'm kind of going, look, I'm not in the business to just buy one
yeah,
property. If we're going to work together, then we need to start off the way that I want to work and how you want to work.
yeah,
So that that for me is like, it's just the basics. It's just being open. And I appreciate that probably some sourcing agents have been burned in the past by clients. And that's why there is that kind of barrier around providing information.
mm,
But I would suggest that then we just need to sit down, have a chat, and kind of build that relationship to get to know each other.
yeah,
And then hopefully from that comes the trust and the confidence to kind of share information. That has to be the way that it works, is being open with information. um in terms of good sourcing agents, I think it's the opposite basically of what I've just said. So just being open with info and saying, and also it's nice to be like at the top of someone's list.
yeah,
But yeah, going, look, this is the deal, this is a rough refurb, I do like it. We've worked with kind of both, where they have provided a build team and it's been project managed, and also just ones that we've bought and then we've got our own build team in. I think it's good to kind of give clients an option around whether they want to use their own build team or not. But I also think it's great to offer that project management service as well.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, and just the sourcing agents that kind of do the best for me are the ones that I can have that relationship with. And just don't just chat rubbish, because it all comes out to like bite you on the bum down the line.
yeah,
Equally, I would say, so when I started, there were all those deals that I've walked away from and probably could have sourced on. So then 2 years fast forward, there were the odd few that I kind of thought, do you know what? I should source these on, because we just didn't have the capacity to do that. We didn't have enough build teams. We were still only working with one guy, and he was going, yeah, I can do everything, it's fine. And we're going, you're hemorrhaging. Let's just source some of these on, get a little bit of cash back in. So I just found it so stressful doing it. I'm like, oh God, it's not something that I enjoy. I think if I was to do it now, which I do again, if there's like the odd thing that we're not buying. So the one that I'd said we've just agreed earlier this year, I was going to source that on, and then we've since just decided to keep it. We're like, why are we not doing that? It's a good deal.
yeah,
But actually, just the whole, I can see how stressful it is from a source's point of view.
right,
Just especially working with new investors and expectations. I think from a investor's point of view, you've got to appreciate that you have to do your own due diligence. Don't expect the sourcing agent to do everything for you. Obviously, I want information from the sourcing agent, But as the investor, you cannot put all of the onus on the agent to do it all. If something doesn't work out, which more often than not in property, deals don't stack the way that they should do or look like they would do on paper,
Yeah.
then that's your responsibility as the investor. And that's something that I kind of learned over time when I was doing my odd bit of sourcing. I was feeling it. I was like, oh my God, if they don't get the end value, if it doesn't work out, blah, blah, blah. But actually, through more experience now, I know, well, that's likely to happen.
Yeah.
And it's up to the investor to actually make sure that the deal works for them.
I think the thing that I find is people will talk themselves out of a deal for X number of reasons, and if they just got in and did it,
Yeah,
and went through the trials and tribulations, at the end of it, they'll always be happy with the outcome.
exactly.
If they overanalyze it at the start and think about the what ifs, sometimes they'll just talk themselves out of it and then end up regretting it. So it's interesting to hear that you've dabbled with sourcing. So the shout out to anyone who's doing sourcing. It's not as easy as it looks. It is quite stressful, and we have to deal with people who might have unrealistic expectations or need the hands holding. So fair enough for being honest in that respect. So your portfolio, then, I didn't ask you actually, how many buy-to-lets have you amassed over the 5 years?
20.
20. So you've got 20 buy-to-lets, 10 HMOs in 5 years, which is a fantastic achievement. And I just want to take a moment to give you a small round of applause.
Very small. That's what I get.
Very, very admirable and very inspiring to anybody who's out there thinking it's too hard, or I can't do it, or I'm not going to get the results. In 5 years, you can go from 0 to 30 properties, 15 grand a month if you follow the process. So, looping back,
Yeah.
everything is based on, it's the bicycle analogy. There's 2 wheels on the bicycle. There's finding the properties, and we've had a chat about how you sourcing agents, you diversify, so you're not just in one area, you're across all of sort of West Yorkshire,
Yeah.
using agents to leverage so they can do everything so you don't have to. Then we come into the money side of things.
Yeah.
So when you started out, did you have a pot of seed capital? Because I know that you've done very well at raising investor finance. How much have you raised so far?
At last count, we're up to about, I feel like we'd be over 1 million now, but I think at last count, we're like at 850. But I'll come back to you. I will let you know the numbers, because it just gets a bit scary when you look at what you've raised. You go, oh, I think at the minute, outstanding loans, I did have it written down on here, we're at about 560k.
So this 800, you sort of cycle it. They get into a deal, out of a deal, back into a deal, out of a deal, back into a deal.
Exactly.
And that enables you to build a portfolio. Was it 4 million?
About that, 4.5, yeah.
Yeah. So by using, 500 to 800 grand's worth of other people's money, you can build a portfolio.
Yep.
With 4 million, 25% deposit. So on paper, that's £1 million portfolio using less than other people's money. So it's a really good example of how the system works and how you go in and out.
Yeah.
Pounded over time.
And I do remember at the start kind of thinking, this is not going to work. This isn't going to work. And then also, so we did, to touch on what you said, we did have our own pot of savings to get us started. So that the first 2 deals that we did, so the little buy-to-let, we bridged it. We used our own cash for the deposit. We used our own cash for the refurb. And then the HMO that we did, that was an 88k purchase. We bridged that as well. So we put our deposit money in and we had the refurb cash. And then that was it. We're like, that is us done.
Yeah.
So we did actually, I think it was at that point, because that's the hard bit that people find is like, why is anyone going to lend us any money when we haven't got any evidence of what we've done and how the process works? So one reason for starting my Instagram was like, okay, this is my evidence reel of everything that I've done to date. So that adds to kind of my credibility.
Yeah.
We do only work with, and initially put together this finance document and just handed it out to friends and family and just said, look, can you just have a read through this? Does this make any sense?
Yeah.
Not, will you give us some money? Just, does it make sense? We're thinking of starting a new venture. And I remember giving it to my mum and her kind of going, right, you've missed a full stop there. And that needs to be a capital letter. And I've gone,
Yeah.
Point, mum. But then another family member was like, oh, okay, I'd be interested to have a chat and learn more about this. And then he was our first investor that came on board. So a family member who we wouldn't have thought would have been interested. And then that's really cool because you're creating this win-win and it's staying in your family as well. So absolute bonus.
Mm.
And then over time, really bizarre. We only work with like six investors, six couples. And like you say, they're now on this hook where the money comes in, we finish a deal. So all our cash, and I know people do it differently, all of our investments are all attributed to individual properties. So even if it's just refurb cash,
Yeah.
that is tied into one property. So
Yes.
when we come to refinance, we know, right, that's for X. Send that back to John Smith or whatever. So we can keep a track of it. I don't like taking money and not assigning it to a house. And then obviously when we hand that money back, so one of our investors, I think he was up to about £2,700 a month in interest payments because we like paying monthly. There's only one that doesn't, which is annoying, but everyone else is monthly cash flow. So obviously you give them their 120, 140K back, and then they go, can I give that back to you? Because I want to keep that monthly cash flow coming. So that's the way that it's worked. And that's why we've never kind of broadened the net and had to kind of take, I wouldn't want to, and then again, everyone's different, but to have to do like 10K here, 5K there, 1K there, I think it just gets really bitty. So for me, it's about from the start, telling everyone what we were doing, having conversations, posting on Instagram, posting on Facebook, building kind of a reel of evidence of what we were doing, and then doing testimonials from investors as well, and then on Instagram, Facebook, saying, are you looking to make your money work harder for you? The interesting thing is, or what I'm thinking it'll be interesting over the next year with this cost of living squeeze as well, and what we're actually offering our investors, because ours kind of range from 6 to 10, depending on the amount that's invested. But yeah, I'm kind of thinking we may be needing to increase, which at the time, at 5 years ago, those rates were awesome, whereas now everyone's feeling the pinch a bit more.
Is there not an argument to suggest that people should invest with you at 6, 7, 8% rather than leaving it in the bank, because the inflation is eroding their savings quicker?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
More of a reason to invest with a property investor rather than.
You're right. Exactly.
More money. If anybody's listening and they've got money that's sat in the bank and it's getting eroded by inflation, invest it with a property investor. Doesn't have to be me, it doesn't have to be Caroline, but invest it with a property investor who'll give you a better rate than the inflation rate, really, and then your money won't go backwards, because that's the fear at the moment, is whatever you've got saved up is actually worth in real times less and less and less.
Yeah.
And all that hard work's gone to waste.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So some really good. I've wrote some notes there while you've been talking about what to do. I'm on a big cash raise at the minute, so my focus was on building the business and building the logistic capacity to take a property, refurb it, put tenants in, and we've done that now. So now it's about me going out there and raising the funds, and I've created some like automations and some funnels so that people can express an interest in my finance brochure, get a copy, and they go into a mailing list then that I can hit them when I'm raising money. So I've only just really started with that. Before I went on holiday, I had my finance document finished. I've put that back into the funnel. I've done one post, I think, to try and promote people to download it, and got one person who's interested. So if anybody's listening and they'd be interested in looking at my funnel, if you go onto my link tree, which is in the bio, and click on private finance document, you'll fill in a little form and then you'll go through my process. So, apologies for sending you a text or an email about the investments, but if you want to look at the funnel and how it works and you want to go through my funnel, do that. But let me know that you're not interested in investing, so at least I won't hassle you in the future to to borrow money off you. But yeah, have a look at the funnel. I'm really big on my automations. So one thing that popped out when you were chatting before was setting the business up
Yeah.
as the mum of two kids. Now I've got two kids myself. My missus works in a hospital, so she does long shifts. So Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I drop the kids off, get the kids from childminder. So I know what the impact is of having family and the commitments of childcare. How did you find having a job? I mean, I used to work in sales as well. So,
Yeah.
the difference between traveling up and down the M1 or across the M62, forever being in the car on a motorway or in a service station or needing a wee and being stuck in traffic, to then working in property where you're in your area, your patch,
Yeah.
in an office where you can just get work done. I completely get that. But how did you find the transition of having the job, trying to do property investments and the family? And how have you found your ability now to have your family life exactly where you want it, with property being the driver of the freedom of your sort of life?
So I'm like, anyone that wants to invest in property, if you don't have kids and you think you don't have time, just get started investing in property because when you have kids, then you're like, oh my God, what did I even do with my life before I had children? I had so much time. So yeah, number one, if you don't have kids, then just get started investing now, because it's a heck of a lot easier. Number two, with my job, I mean, I know I was saying I was employed before, but my office, so our office was down south, I could work from home. So that really gave me the freedom. So other than, yes, I had to be on the road kind of 3 days a week, we must have crossed paths a lot of times on the M1 or M62.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, all the other times, if I was working from home, so I'd already I like working from home. I've never worked in an office environment. So I kind of thrive by myself. I
Yeah.
love meeting people and I love being out and very sociable, but I also just love cracking on with stuff at home. And I
Yeah.
know I'm way more productive than I would be if I was in an office. It's probably a good thing I'm not in an office. But yeah, and then in terms of, so with kids and like that juggle, I had 3 days when the kids were in nursery
Yeah.
before Harry started school for that year. So that was me blitzing those 3 days. And also when they're in nursery, it's like 8 until 5. So it's like a full day. Now they're in
Up a
school,
day,
it's
yeah.
9 until 3. Like
Yeah.
what? So yeah, so that was fine. I think another key thing that I kind of say to the people I work with when they're going, oh, I need to do like 23 hours of research on investing in property today and la la la. My kind of thing is, well, number one, you live once and you need to remember why you're doing it and the balance that you are looking for. So don't stress yourself out to the max that it means that you're not being productive. Try and do something every day that
Yeah.
gets you towards your goal. So give yourself like the small wins. So when I started, I used to write down every day stuff that I'd done towards kind of growing our property portfolio dream. So I've spoken to 2 agents, I've booked a viewing in, I've done this. So then I could look back and go, geez, actually, all of this that I've compiled over time is a lot of stuff
Yeah.
that I could easily have not done. So that for me was kind of a big visual way of looking at what I'd put into it and just kind of kept me on track and accountable to make sure then that every day I was doing something.
Mm.
In terms of work-life balance now, so you're your own boss, expect to work on night times like Love Island. I'm going, probably won't be sitting down tonight to watch that at 9. I might watch it at 10:30.
Yeah.
I'm not a Love Island snob, but things will pop up. I remember actually my last holiday when I was employed, and I remember my husband saying to me, like, enjoy this holiday because this will be the last one where you've got an out of office on, because going forward that'll be it. You will need to be reachable. But
Yeah.
actually, doesn't bother me. I'm quite happy being available all the time for the most part,
On your terms.
because it's for us. Yeah, exactly. So it's just a different mindset, different way of thinking about things.
I've had a couple of experiences with having two young kids, where the missus is like, oh, by the way, your daughter's not at school tomorrow, so you're going to have her. And I'm like, oh, I've got 3 or 4 viewings booked in. So
Yeah.
I've literally been at a viewing before, and I've been in the house looking around, and the agent's been outside, and they're kind of, I come downstairs and they're like white as a sheet, and my daughter's been in the car with the sunroof down, stood up, like out the sunroof, going crazy, and I'm just like, can you not do that? But something that was always important to me, because I used to work a lot of Saturdays, was
Yeah.
I'd take my kids with me and I'd do viewings. So I've done viewings with people before and sold them properties, and I've been like, look, my kids are here, and I used to like the thought that my kids would be like, that's what daddy does for a living. That's
Yeah.
daddy's job. So I've took them to refurbs before, and you know, go through my Facebook. There's videos of my kids with sweeping brushes on site,
Yeah.
getting stuck in and getting involved,
Yeah.
and I want to see them to see that, and then to see the
Yeah.
finished article. And what do you want to do when you're older? I want to do property like daddy.
Yeah.
Because no one, I interviewed Sarah Flynn a few weeks ago for the podcast.
Yeah.
And one of the things she said was, nobody in the playground goes, I want to be a property investor. I want to be a fireman or a pilot. No one's like, I want to be a property investor. And I kind of want my kids to be like, I want to be a property investor. But I've got another tip for you.
Okay. Yeah.
And anybody else out there who's got kids. Now, one thing that I find when I've got my kids is I do things like I go to the park and they go and play on the swings, and I'm sat there like a lemon for an hour while they want to do their own thing. So for me, that's perfect time to be doing something property related. Obviously, don't neglect your family. You're there to be present in their lives. But if they're playing and they're happy, get on your phone, shortlist a few right move links that you need to call agents, make some notes, do some content.
Yeah.
For me, it's generally social media content. So I'll go to the park, sit down on a bench, and I'll start creating some content.
Yeah.
Or, you're like, let's watch a family film, right? So when we say, let's watch a family film, what that means is we're all going to be in the same room. They're going to be watching a film that they want to watch, and I'm going to be bored out my brain. Get on your phone. I'm in the cinema, and when the trailers are running, I'm there on my phone, and then the kids are like, stop it, daddy, the film's on, and I've got to sit there and watch Sonic the Hedgehog. To be fair, Sonic was a great film.
Sonic is good. It's totally, like you say, it's maximizing your time and finding so I want to be present with them, but also I'm kind of thinking, right, between that 9 and 3 window, prioritizing what do I need to do, what can I smash, what can I do when they've gone to bed, what phone calls can I make. It's funny, if I ask Harry and Isla what does mummy do, I think one of the things is because I'm always there, I'm always at pickup, I'm always at drop off, I take them everywhere. They'd see me like, well, they've just started to kind of say, well, mummy buys houses, and that's pretty much what they'll say. And I just took them to see our latest little service accommodation. They've gone, oh, this is nice, or this is good. And I'm like, oh, well, it's really great for them to kind of see that as well and what we've done.
Yeah.
But before that, I think they just thought I didn't really do a lot because I take them everywhere,
and
which in itself is a job.
But the main thing is you're present, and they see that. Like, my kids never moan about never seeing me.
Yeah.
I'm in their lives a lot.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of stuff done around them. At night is a really good opportunity for you to network on social media with other people. When they've had the tea, kids have gone to bed. You've got a couple of hours of messaging and getting your message out there and building your audience, so you can concentrate on the important stuff when you're at work. And now, talking about kids, I know that you're going to shortly have to go to do the school run. So before I let you go, if you could give us your top tips for anybody who is just getting started in property or with a property business, what would your advice be to them?
Network, meet people, build relationships, be around the people who are doing what you are wanting to do. For us, we both did the same training course. From an education point of view, that was brilliant, but it's very hard. And I remember we did our training and then we went on holiday with our family. So we were so motivated, absolutely buzzing, did a few little bits, but we knew we were going on holiday. Went away for 2 weeks to America, came back, and just really quickly got sucked back into normal life. And people saying, no, you won't be able to do that. You can't do that. That's too hard. So actually, then I went out and found a mentor. And the best bit of advice was to find someone who is a couple of years ahead of you and where you want to be. So same strategy, similar starting points, and just work with someone like that. And that was a real big game changer for us. I knew what I needed to do, but it was having somebody every month to go to and say, can you look at this deal? Have I done enough due diligence? What about this area? Am I missing something here? And obviously over time, those questions that you're asking evolve and change, and your relationship changes with your mentor. But to have someone like that who has been there and done it to help you along the way, that was kind of the biggest thing for us that got us accelerated on our journey.
Great stuff. And if anybody is impressed with what Caroline's done and wants to find out a bit more about Caroline, I think you're starting your own mentorship program at the moment as well, aren't you?
Yes. So I work with like a limited number of clients just on a monthly basis. I'm starting off from next month, just kind of one-off strategy calls as well. So if someone is wanting to get started and just needs to be pointed in the right direction, that's something that I'm going to be offering. And then later on this year, I've got a few things that are going to drop as well, potentially around a podcast, but some other bits around kind of building a bit of a community around education and getting involved in property investing. So watch this space.
Brilliant. And if anybody listening or watching is wanting to get hold of you, what's the best place to find you?
Best place is just on Instagram, so at Caroline Tolman Property, and then like you, I've got a link tree in my bio as well, so you can either just direct message me on Instagram or drop me an email through Linktree.
And what I will do is I'll get the link to your Instagram and the link to your Linktree, and I'll put it in the comments.
Brilliant.
I think that's it. So Caroline, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. Absolutely brilliant guest. Some great content there. I'm sure everyone will have taken a lot from it.
Thank you so much for having me. I just love talking property, as you can tell. I'm sorry if I just whittled on, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thank you for inviting me on.
No, it's all right. And next up, I've got a couple of estate agents. So keep an eye out for the next couple of episodes of the podcast where I'll be talking to people who've set up estate agencies who are doing really, really well. So if you're interested in that side of property, then stick around. And that's it. Thank you for joining me on the Evolution of a Property Business podcast. I've been your host, Sam Watson.
Thank you for listening to the Evolution of a Property Business podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.